What was it that you reviewed? What was it about what you reviewed that made you let me just ask you for your response to this, that made you believe what was happening was a genocide?
What made me, and I can speak for I think my colleagues as well, believe that what was going on and what is at this very moment as we're sitting here is a genocide, is the correspondence between the actions that we're seeing on the ground and the statements and actions of intent, right? We're very well familiar that to have an event sort of fall under the 1948 Convention of Genocide, it requires both action and intent. And here we see that very, very clearly in a way that seems really quite unique in history. Very often the statements of intent are not declared publicly. They're not declared openly by the people who are responsible for carrying out the violence, but they use code words or they use euphemisms or they speak to simply the will of various leaders. But here, the statements of intent were made from the very, very beginning, and the actions correspond so clearly to them that there was no reason for me and my colleagues to not take the Israeli leaders at their word.
Can you describe some of those statements that struck you?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the early statements were, for example, the president of Israel declaring that all Gazans were responsible for this, that there are no innocent people in Gaza. Hearing the Minister of Defense, as we've heard from other witnesses, talk about there being no food, no water, no electricity will be allowed to Gaza. The Israeli Minister of Energy, who declared that there'll be no water, not a single battery will be given until Gazans disappear entirely. And the one that was most alarming to me was hearing the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, declare many, many times that Israel is fighting a war against Amalek, right? This biblical image that is seen as the eternal enemy of the Jewish people, and who in Hebrew scripture, the Israelite people were commanded to destroy them utterly, men, women, children, even their cattle. And this is an image that resonates with every Jewish person who knows scripture, with every Israeli. And again, we see that the military is not just taking this as sort of symbolic rhetoric, but this is what they're doing.
So you submitted this declaration with your colleagues on November 13th. And as we sit here today, has there been anything that has happened since then that has changed your mind or impacted your opinion that you shared?
When I read the declaration now that we submitted then, I'm struck by how much worse the situation has become and how everything that we feared and more is unfolding. Then, if I remember correctly, we were talking about 11,000 people known to be dead. Now, the number as of this morning is over 26,000 people who are dead. There's some 63,000 people who are injured. What we're also seeing are clear efforts by Israeli authorities to destroy the conditions of life, which, again, of course, is a violation of the 1948 Convention. And for this, I would point to Israel's decision to not allow food aid into Gaza, to not allow medical supplies, either for Gazans or for the people who are still being held hostage. We see Israel going so far as to make decisions to flood tunnels that, to my mind, are not illegal. What you do with the tunnels may be a violation, but to flood the tunnels with millions of gallons of seawater, which are threatening to destroy the aquifer and to not allow.
Objection, Your Honor.
Stand, please.
Your Honor, I object to Dr. Trachtenberg's characterization of what's going on with the tunnels. He's not an expert in the field of military affairs or what's going on in that regard.
Overall, take please.
In effect, what we're starting to see is insulting the earth, right, which will prevent food from growing and from Gazans to be able to survive. And so to my understanding, this seems to be a textbook.
Your Honor,
of genocide.
objection. There's been no question posed.
He was finishing his response.
Let me just say, let me ask you, why don't you ask the next question, just so we were on sort of the same page, same framework. Thank you.
So having studied the Holocaust and other genocides in history, can you describe the international responses to these atrocities and efforts?
Are you referring to what's happened since October 7th, or do you mean?
No, in general,
Right.
the frameworks in the international community to.
Yep, absolutely.
Objection, vague.
To attempt to prevent genocide.
Overruled. May I answer, Doctor?
Thank you, Hunter. Since 1948, with the Convention on the Prevention of Genocide that's passed by the United Nations, we now have a framework under international law, both to prevent and punish the crime of genocide. As we've seen in nearly every genocidal effort since, the legal actions always seem to come afterwards. They come late after those who have been killed in genocide are dead. And then there's an attempt to try to bring justice for the victims against the persecutors of it. What makes this situation so unique is we're watching the genocide unfold as we speak. And we're in this incredibly unique position where we can actually intervene to stop it using the mechanisms of international law that are available to us.